What's up, guys? Paulie Malignaggi, Paulie TV. We had some boxing action tonight, March 29th, 2025. We had, I think the talk of the night is probably going to be Farmer and Zepeda 2, or Zepeda and Farmer 2, another close competitive battle, another possibly controversial decision. Zepeda brought a lot of pressure, commanded the early rounds with his output, but Farmer's always pesky, man. Farmer's always pesky, and he sort of gets you working really hard and doesn't take the shots that cleanly, so you never really break him down as much as you want to when you're a pressure fighter like Zepeda. And I think that was the reason that if you guys that watch the fight can realize that Farmer had probably more in the tank as the fight wore on, because Zepeda was working so much harder in the beginning stages of the fight. Nonetheless, those beginning stages of the fight were very exciting even for Zepeda. There were moments in the fight where I wasn't sure Farmer was going to be able to deal with that pressure. But as much as the commentators were making like Farmer was being assaulted early in the fight, he was riding with a lot of shots. I thought he was definitely losing the rounds. He was just getting out punched. But the body shots were landing cleanly, but the head shots of most of them were not landing that cleanly. Zepeda really had a lot of trouble hitting Farmer to the head clean, and I think that was a big reason why Farmer was able to withstand the quote-unquote assault that the commentators were, describing, for me, a little bit too violent, because it wasn't as violent as they were making like it was. But it did overwhelm Farmer in the beginning rounds, and it did, give Zepeda the opportunity to command the early part of the fight. Farmer does a lot of things, and he gives you different looks. He gives you, he punches at different speeds. He punches in between you, while Zepeda looks to constantly overwhelm you. You may get a shot off on him, but he's backing you up so much that when you get that shot off on him, there's not it's not enough to sort of dissuade him. I would like to see Zepeda with like sort of a Gervonta Davis type, who hits a little harder than Farmer, but can be pesky as well, can be athletically inclined as well. Thing is, I don't know if Gervonta is mentally strong enough to deal with that kind of pressure either. So I'd like to see it, because it would be an interesting fight. It's probably chalk those up into one of those fights you'll never see lists, Zepeda and Davis. I think they're going to line up Zepeda for Shakur Stevenson, and Shakur is so good. He's because Zepeda is too one-dimensional. As fun as he is, as much pressure as he brings, he's too one-dimensional. And Shakur will probably wash him easily 12-0 or 11-1, something like that, But with Davis, Davis isn't quite as slick. He's not quite as active. He doesn't control you as much. And, he's sort of he intakes a lot of pressure. So if you intake a lot of pressure from Zepeda, if you're Davis, it could cause some trouble. But then again, Davis also has the speed that Farmer has to punch in between you, and Davis has more punching power. So that could also be something that you catch Zepeda in between some of these crazy combinations that he's throwing. You hurt him, you even knock him out. I think it will be fun. I think it will be a good fight. But like I said, we're never gonna see it. First of all, Tank doesn't go anywhere near anybody who he thinks is going to make him uncomfortable. Roche just happened to make him uncomfortable because he underestimated him. But I don't think that, on paper, anybody expected Roche to make him uncomfortable, and that's why we got that fight. But anyway, this isn't about Tank. It's about Zepeda and Farmer. It's a fun lightweight division. I do think there's, a lot of opportunity to make some fun fights. Zepeda, it's really deserving for Zepeda to get a title shot. It really is at this point, right? I mean, he's a fun fighter, but he's limited. And in a tough lightweight division, I don't know if he can win a world championship. I don't know what you guys think. I'd definitely like your thoughts on Zepeda's chances to win a lightweight title. But I also think, based on tonight's performance, based on tonight's action, I know Farmer was really frustrated that he didn't get the decision. But I still think Farmer is really, really a relevant player in a lightweight division that is really stacked with talent. If we look at the lightweight division, maybe 154 pounds, the super welterweight division, junior middleweight division, and maybe is more stacked with talent than lightweight. But other than that, I mean, there's not a lot of weight classes with as much talent as the lightweight division. There's weight classes with stars. For example, I think 140 has more stars, more star power there. There's bigger names there at 140, but I don't know if it's as deep in talent as 135. So the lightweight division could potentially still have a lot of fun fights to make, and it's just a matter of are they gonna make them or not? Also, this could be a top ranked golden boy fight. Murataya against Zepeda. That would be they would be that would be a really physical, violent fight, all action fight as well. That could be a fun fight. But I do think that from what I'm hearing, Murtaya and Keyshawn Davis will probably get matched up together. They're rivals from the amateurs, and there's probably some bad blood and some competition that spilled over into the pros from their rivalry in the amateurs. But again, when you talk about Zepeda's one-dimensional style, fun, effective if you're not able to deal with it. And we've seen Zepeda when he's not been able, when there's been guys who can't box it so well, or can't be as crafty. You see how destructive he looks, how violent he looks, and how obviously effective and scary he can look. I think was it the guy Maxie Hughes that he really overwhelmed, that had given Kambosos a really tough fight, or he probably got robbed against Kambosos. Yeah, in a weaker lightweight division, I Zepeda probably could win a world championship, but I don't think that in the current lightweight division he's gonna be a world champion. I'm not sure. It's again, you guys can let me know your thoughts. I think he's going to be a fun fighter. I think he's going to hang around for a little while. And also, I think Farmer also deserves some shots. I don't know who, at this point, he'd fight. I mean, I wouldn't even mind seeing Farmer against Gervonta Davis, to be honest. I don't know if Gervonta Davis is going to rematch Lamont Roche. That should be on the first order of affairs. But I could see, I'd watch Farmer against anybody at lightweight. Even, his record would tell you that he's faded and whatnot. But if you watch him in the ring, he constantly performs. He constantly gives his best. And he constantly makes it entertaining. And he's very, 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 very difficult to deal with. There's also Andy Cruz lurking in the mix. He's one of these guys who's kind of there as well, and looked at as like a boogeyman and very, very dangerous. And then you got, the bottom half of the top 10, the lightweight division. You got guys like, your Frank Martins of the world, who looked bad against Gervonta Davis, but prior to that had looked pretty solid, So this is a good weight class. There could be some matchups to make. I know that probably nobody will make it, but I'd watch like Farmer and Martyn, so sort of a bottom tier, top 10, top 12 type of matchup. But none of them are really A-side kind of guys. They're good fighters that always get thrown into the B-side, unfortunately. So boxing never really matches two high-level B-sides against one another. That will be a pretty good fight too. Anyway, let's get to the other fight of the night. That was Brian Norman Jr., his return. Long layoff for Brian Norman Jr. He won the WBO welterweight title, and then he in an upset. And then he was mentioned in the sweepstakes to fight Jaron Ennis. Was offered decent money, pretty good money, at least for a brand new champion, and he turned it down. I saw the interview where he said he bet on himself, and they are expecting to be reigning at welterweight for a while, and there's always time to make that fight. One thing I didn't realize, Norman is the youngest boxing world champion in the sport right now, so there's that does show a lot of upside. Tonight's win over Cuevas doesn't really show not much. Cuevas was basically your equivalent of a cab driver. First clean shots he took, he was looking out of the fight, and he didn't even complain when the referee stopped it. So, I mean, I don't know how you show up to your first world title fight like that. You got 28 pro fights. The guy was 27-1. Take a couple of clean shots, and already you're looking, you have no problem getting out of the fight. I don't know. You work your whole life to get to a title fight, and this is how you go out, with no rhyme or reason, with not a care for that stoppage. But, again, that was a level that he was at for a 1-year layoff or whatever, or however time Norman was off. Plus, it's his first world championship, first defense. Okay, we can give Norman a pass here. Obviously, there's a lot of question marks about Norman in this welterweight division, but I think it's key that he comes back with a win where he looks good here tonight, especially with Stanionis and Ennis just 2 weeks away. So he gets himself in the conversation and keeps his name in the mix. Because you should, when you're a champion, you want to be active and you keep your name in the mix. So we'll see how the welterweight division sort of pans out as well, because Stanionis and Ennis for me are still the top two guys, and I don't think much of Barrios. He's always looking very, very susceptible, but he's a WBC welterweight champion again. I think that speaks more of the weakness of the welterweight division than anything else, But we'll see. We'll see how things play out. What do you guys think of Brian Norman's future? Do you think the winner of Stanionis and Ennis goes up to 154? Do you think they stay at 147 and try to keep unifying? Either guy, because I think either guy could probably move up to 154. They've been at 47 and they've been dangerous at 147. We'll see. All right, and let me know what you guys think of the future for Zepeda and Farmer, and who should they both fight next? All right, I'm Paulie Malignaggi, guys. It's Paulie TV.